I want to tell you about a laugh. Not a warm laugh. Not the kind that fills a room with something good. The specific kind of laugh that is designed to communicate something, that you are small, that you were wrong to think you deserved more, that the door you are walking out of is the last door that will ever open for you. I heard that laugh on a Tuesday morning in March 6 years ago. I was standing in the lobby of a building in Dallas, Texas, with 2 suitcases and a portfolio of my professional work and a divorce settlement that my ex-husband's attorney had spent 4 months constructing specifically to leave me with as little as possible while remaining technically legal. My ex-husband's mother was standing near the elevator bank. She had come down specifically to watch me leave. She looked at my 2 suitcases. She looked at me. And she laughed. Not loudly. Quietly. The specific, controlled laugh of someone who has won something and is savoring it. She said, "Good luck, sweetheart." I picked up my suitcases. I walked out of that building. I did not look back. What happened in the 4 years between that Tuesday morning and the Wednesday afternoon I walked back into that building, not through the lobby but through the executive entrance, not with 2 suitcases but with a signed acquisition agreement, is the story I want to tell you today. If you are new here, please subscribe right now and drop your country and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you all the way back. My name is Alexandra Marsh. I am 41 years old. I grew up in Houston, Texas, the eldest of 3 children, in a family that was comfortable but not wealthy in the specific way that comfortable but not wealthy teaches you the value of things. My father was a high school football coach. My mother was an office manager. They were people who worked hard and expected their children to work hard and who believed, with the specific conviction of people who have built everything they have from genuine effort, that effort was the primary currency of a good life. I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in business administration. I was 22 years old and I had, for as long as I could remember, wanted to build something. Not inherit something. Not marry into something. Build something from the specific combination of intelligence and effort and will that I had been assembling since I was old enough to understand that the world rewarded people who showed up. I took a position at a commercial development firm in Dallas. I was good at it in the way that people are good at things that align with everything they are. Within 3 years I was managing accounts that were significantly larger than what people 3 years into their careers typically managed. Within 4 years I had been promoted twice and had a reputation in the Dallas commercial real estate community that was beginning to precede me in the specific way of someone whose work speaks before they enter the room. And then I met Richard Holt. Richard was the son of the Holt family. I will tell you what the Holt family was because understanding what they were is essential to understanding what happened. The Holts were Dallas commercial real estate. 3rd generation. His grandfather had started with a single office building in 1962. His father had expanded it through the 70s and 80s into a portfolio that covered most of the DFW Metroplex. Richard had been positioned since birth to inherit and extend what 2 generations had built. He was charming. He was handsome in the specific way of someone who has always known they are handsome and has learned to use it without being entirely consumed by it. He was intelligent, genuinely, not performatively. And he had the specific quality of someone who had grown up around money in the way that makes money invisible to them, not because they do not value it but because they have never had to think about it the way people who did not grow up around it have to think about it. I was attracted to him. I want to be honest about that because the marriage was not a mistake I walked into blindly. I was attracted to Richard and I loved Richard, and for the first 3 years of our relationship I believed he was the specific kind of partner I had been looking for, someone who matched my ambition, who understood my drive, who wanted to build something rather than simply maintain what he had inherited. I believed this. I was not entirely wrong. But I was not entirely right either. We got married when I was 29. The wedding was a Holt family production, large, expensive, the specific performance of a family that understood itself as a brand and treated significant events accordingly. My parents came from Houston and were warm and somewhat overwhelmed, and I remember watching my father in his rented suit shake hands with Richard's father in his custom one and feeling a complicated mixture of love and protectiveness and the specific, unnamed discomfort of someone who understands that the worlds being joined at this ceremony are not equivalently weighted. I filed that discomfort. I married Richard. The marriage was not bad in the beginning. I want to be fair about this because this is not a story about a terrible marriage from the start. The first 2 years were good in the way that things can be good before the specific weight of context settles in and makes itself known. We lived in a house in Highland Park that was more house than I had ever imagined living in. We worked, Richard at the family firm, I at my own company, a boutique commercial real estate advisory firm I had launched 8 months before the wedding, and that was, by year 2 of the marriage, generating revenue that I was proud of in a way I could not entirely share with my in-laws because the Holts did not think of it as a serious business. That was the first specific thing. The Holts did not take my firm seriously. Not dismissively, they were too polished for dismissal. But in the specific way of people who are certain of the hierarchy of things and who have placed my firm, in that hierarchy, several levels below what they were doing. Richard's mother Eleanor referred to it as Sarah's project. Not Alexandra's firm. Sarah's project. As though it were a hobby that had gotten somewhat out of hand. I noticed. I did not address it because addressing it in the Holt family context required a specific calibration that I had not yet fully developed, and because the marriage was otherwise good and I had decided to let the work speak rather than demand recognition through argument. The work spoke. The firm grew. The revenue in year 3 was larger than year 2. The revenue in year 4 was larger than year 3. I hired 2 people. Then 3. Eleanor continued to call it Sarah's project. The second specific thing was the Holt firm itself. Richard's father Gerald wanted me involved. Not as a partner, that was not the offer. As a resource. He understood, with the specific, pragmatic intelligence of a man who had built a successful business over 40 years, that I was good at what I did and that what I did was related to what the Holt firm did and that proximity to my skills could be useful. He offered me an advisory role. I accepted it because I thought it was the beginning of something genuine. Because I believed that my work within the firm would demonstrate what I was capable of in a context that the family would take seriously in a way they had not taken my own firm seriously. I was wrong about why Gerald had offered it. He had offered it because he was beginning to see, with the specific, unsentimental clarity of a man who has been evaluating businesses for 40 years, that the firm had structural problems. That the decisions being made at the senior level, decisions that Richard was increasingly involved in as he was positioned for eventual leadership, were not decisions that reflected the market reality the firm was operating in. He wanted my eyes on it. Not my voice. My eyes. He wanted me to see the problems without being in a position to say what needed to be said about them. I did not understand this for 2 years. The marriage ended in the 5th year. Not dramatically. The specific, quiet ending of something that has been losing pressure for a long time and has finally run out of what kept it inflated. Richard and I had become parallel to each other in the way that some marriages become parallel, living in the same space, maintaining the forms of partnership, without the specific, daily choosing of each other that keeps a marriage alive. I want to be honest about my own contribution to this. I was not a perfect wife. I was consumed by the firm in ways that left less of me available to the marriage than it needed. I was also, by year 4, beginning to understand things about the Holt firm and the Holt family that were changing what I understood about what I had married into, and that understanding was creating a distance in me that I had not fully named but that Richard could feel. He told me in September of year 5 that he thought we should separate. I agreed. I thought the separation was a step toward working on the marriage. I was wrong. It was a step toward the divorce that Richard had already decided on and that his family's attorneys were already preparing for. I found out the extent of the preparation when my own attorney received the initial filing. The divorce settlement that Richard's attorneys constructed was, as I said, designed to leave me with as little as possible while remaining technically legal. This is a specific art form and they were skilled at it. My firm was categorized as a marital asset despite being founded before the marriage, a categorization that my attorney challenged and that was eventually partially corrected but not before significant time and money had been spent on the challenge. The Highland Park house was Richard's family money. The investment accounts were Richard's family money. The specific architecture of the Holt family's financial arrangements had been constructed over 3 generations specifically to ensure that in the event of a dissolution, as little as possible was exposed. I had known this intellectually before the marriage. I had not fully understood it experientially until I was inside the dissolution. My settlement was, I will not give you the specific number because the number is not the point. The settlement was a fraction of what a reasonable accounting of 5 years of marriage should have produced. My attorney said we could fight it. I said I wanted it finished. I wanted to be done with it. I took the settlement. I took my firm. I took my 2 suitcases of personal belongings. And on a Tuesday morning in March I walked out of the building in Highland Park where I had lived for 4 years. And Eleanor Holt laughed. I want to tell you about the 4 years after that Tuesday morning. Not in general terms. Specifically. Because the specific things are what matter. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in uptown Dallas that cost significantly less per month than I had been accustomed to, and that was mine in a way that the Highland Park house had never been mine, and that felt, in the specific way of something that is yours because you earned it, exactly right. I went back to the firm. Not to the advisory role at the Holt firm. To my own firm. The boutique commercial real estate advisory firm that Eleanor had called Sarah's project and that had been generating revenue that I was proud of before the divorce interrupted everything. I had 2 employees and 3 active clients and revenue that was real and growing. I started working. I want to be careful about how I describe the 4 years because I do not want to make them sound effortless. They were not effortless. There were months where the cash flow was tighter than it should have been and where I made decisions about what to pay first that I do not want to think about too carefully. There were evenings in that uptown apartment where the specific weight of what I had come from and what I was trying to build pressed down in a way that required more than I always had. But there were also things I did not expect. The divorce had clarified something. Not immediately. Not cheerfully. But over the months after, as the distance from the Holt family and the Holt firm and the specific context of being Richard's wife gave me perspective I had not had from inside it, I began to understand something I had been close enough to see for 2 years but had not been positioned to act on. The Holt firm had a problem. A serious structural problem that Gerald had seen and had wanted my eyes on without wanting my voice on. A problem with their commercial portfolio, specifically with a cluster of properties in the uptown and midtown submarkets that had been acquired at prices that the market had not supported and that were, as interest rates moved and the market adjusted, becoming increasingly difficult to service. I had seen the problem. I had not been in a position to act on it. I was in a position now. I spent the first year after the divorce watching. Not the firm specifically, I had no access to their financials. But the market. The specific properties. The public records. The specific, careful, methodical accumulation of information that my training had prepared me to gather and analyze. By month 14 I understood the shape of what was coming for the Holt firm. Not immediately. These things move slowly. But coming. I spent the second year positioning. Not against the Holts. I want to be clear about this because the story I am telling could be read as a revenge story and it is not. I was not positioning against anyone. I was positioning for the opportunity that I could see and that my analysis told me was approximately 18 to 24 months from becoming actionable. I brought in a partner. A woman named Catherine who had been in Dallas commercial real estate for 20 years and who had the specific, deep market relationships that I had the analytical skills to complement. We structured a fund. We raised capital from 3 investors who had worked with me before and who trusted my analysis. We waited. The third year the Holt firm's situation began to become visible. Not to the general market, it takes time for these things to surface publicly. But to the specific people in the Dallas commercial real estate community who knew where to look. I knew where to look. In month 31 after the divorce, I received a call. Not from Richard. From Gerald. He said, "Alexandra, I think we should talk. I want to tell you about that meeting." Gerald Holt was 71 years old. He had built a firm over 40 years that had been one of the most significant commercial real estate operations in DFW. He was a man who had made decisions from a position of strength for his entire professional life. He was not in a position of strength when I sat across from him in a conference room in his building. He had come to me. That matters. He walked me through the firm's situation with the specific, unsentimental clarity of someone who has run out of the time and resources to manage perception and needs someone with eyes that are clear. The uptown and midtown properties were the core of it. The portfolio had been over-leveraged on acquisitions that the market had not supported. The interest rate environment had compounded the problem. The firm needed either a significant capital infusion or a strategic transaction, an acquisition, a merger, a partnership, to stabilize. He had been talking to several potential partners. He was talking to me because I was, he said, the most qualified person he knew for what the portfolio needed. I listened to everything. Then I said, "Gerald, I want to be honest with you about something." He said, "Please." "I have been watching this situation develop for 2 years," I said. "I have a fund positioned for a transaction in this specific market segment. I have the capital and the operational capacity to acquire the distressed portion of your portfolio at a price that is fair given current market conditions and that would allow the firm to stabilize the remaining assets." He looked at me. "You have been watching this for 2 years," he said. "Yes," I said. "Since before it became visible." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "You saw this when you were in the advisory role," he said. "Yes," I said. "And you left before you could act on it." "I was asked to leave," I said. "More precisely." He looked at me for a long time. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For how the divorce was handled. For how this family handled you. That was not right." I held that. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that." "Is it enough?" he said. "It is a start," I said. "The transaction will help." He almost smiled. "I imagine it will," he said. We spent 3 weeks on due diligence. My team and his team. The numbers were what I had expected them to be. The transaction structure I proposed was the one I had been building toward for 2 years. We signed the agreement on a Wednesday afternoon. I walked into the building through the executive entrance. Not the lobby where I had stood with 2 suitcases. The executive entrance on the side of the building that the Holt family had used since Gerald's father built the place in 1968. The signing was in the main conference room. Gerald was there. His attorneys. My partner Catherine. My attorneys. The fund's lead investor. Richard was not there. I had requested that specifically and Gerald had honored the request without comment. Eleanor was not there. The signing took 45 minutes. When it was finished and the papers were executed and my attorneys were gathering the documents, I looked around the conference room. At the walls that had seen 3 generations of Holt family decisions. At the table where I had sat in an advisory role for 2 years while Eleanor called my firm Sarah's project. At the specific, quiet evidence of a transaction that had taken 4 years of work and positioning and patience to arrive at. I thought about Tuesday morning in March. The 2 suitcases. The lobby. The laugh. "Good luck, sweetheart." I thought about my father in his rented suit shaking hands with Gerald in his custom one. I thought about effort as the primary currency of a good life. Then I picked up my copy of the signed agreement and I walked out through the executive entrance. I want to tell you what happened after. Not the transaction details, those are not this story's business. But the other things. Richard called me 3 days after the signing. He said he had heard. He said he did not know what to say. I told him he did not need to say anything. That there was nothing between us that required conversation. That I wished him well and meant it. He said, "You always were the smartest person in any room we were in together." I am sorry it took me this long to say that. I said, "Thank you, Richard." I hung up. Eleanor called me 6 weeks after the signing. This surprised me. I answered because I was curious and because I had decided, at some point in the 4 years, that curiosity was more productive than avoidance. She was quiet for a moment after I answered. Then she said, "I said something to you the morning you left. I want to apologize for it." I said, "I remember what you said." "I know," she said. "I imagine you do." I said, "Good luck." I said it in a way that was meant to be unkind. "I want to tell you that what you have done in 4 years is, I do not have the right word. I am not sure there is a word for what you have done in 4 years. I thought about Eleanor in the lobby. The controlled laugh. The specific, savoring quality of it. I thought about the work. The apartment in Uptown. Catherine. The fund. The 2 years of watching and the 2 years of positioning. I said, "Eleanor. I did not do what I did because of what you said that morning. I did it because it was what I was going to do regardless." The laugh did not change the direction. It just clarified something. "What did it clarify?" she said. "That I was not going to spend any more of my life in a room where someone laughed at me while I was walking out," I said. "I was going to build rooms where that could not happen." She was quiet for a long time. "You built them," she said. "Yes," I said. "I did. My firm is not a boutique advisory anymore. We manage a portfolio that I will not describe in specific dollar terms because the terms are not the story. We have 14 employees. We have a market reputation that precedes me in rooms I have not yet entered. Catherine and I are equal partners in something that is genuinely ours in the way that things are genuinely yours when you build them from effort and intelligence and will. My parents came to the office last year. My father walked through the space slowly. He looked at the team. At the work on the walls. At the evidence of what had been built. He found me at the end of the tour and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, without a great deal of ceremony because he is not a man of great ceremony, "This is what I always knew you were going to do." I said, "You never told me that." He said, "I did not need to. You already knew." He was right. I always knew. The laugh did not change what I knew. It just made the knowing louder. "Before you go, I want to tell you something directly. The people who laugh when you walk out are working with incomplete information. They are seeing the 2 suitcases. They are not seeing the 4 years. They are seeing the door you are walking out of. They are not seeing the one you are going to build." The laugh is not a verdict. It is a data point. It tells you something about the person who is laughing and nothing about the person who is leaving. You are the person who is leaving. Keep walking. The building you are going to build is bigger than the one you are walking out of. It always is. Drop the word lobby in the comments if this story reached something real in you. Lobby for the one I walked out of with 2 suitcases. Lobby for the one you walked out of that someone did not think you could survive. And if you are new here, subscribe. Every single day I share a new story about family, about building, about the people who walked out of one room and built an entirely different one. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's Dark Truth.